Hello, everyone. At least I hope someone's out there. I'm sure Quindy is. Quindy's very faithful to us. Although even Quindy sometimes has things to do or isn't feeling well. I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. Someone say something and confirm that you can see and hear me. There we go. Green users and Quindy are here today. Hello. There may be a sad cat here. Those of you who have pets, I'm sure are experienced with the time change phenomenon where stomach o'clock takes a little while to reset, and we have not got there yet. We are just beginning the reset on stomach o'clock. It's even harder than changing the car clock, which I have not done yet either. So I'm going to do something a little different today, I think, because I was having trouble deciding what to do today. I'm just going to paint a little bit, but that's not really what I'm going to do. Well, actually, first, I'm going to show you the scariest Halloween thing that I found this weekend. So this is a brush. We're going through some old stuff, which does pertain to the not painting thing that I want to do today. This is a Games and Gear double-headed brush, which I don't particularly recommend, but that's another story. But I brought it up, and I was going to put it with my other brushes, and I'm like, something looks weird about this. Let's zoom in a little. And if I take the cap off, I think it will become more apparent what looks weird. And in this same box, I did find a couple of dead moths. And this is a natural hairbrush, and that is what happened. So moths will eat the hairs on brushes, just like sweaters and whatever other thing. So that's just something to be mindful of if you are storing brushes. Keep that in mind. I don't think I've ever seen it happen with like brushes that are out. Like I just leave my brushes in cups like this, and I don't think I've ever noticed any moths flying around or causing problems. Because presumably they like to go eat and lay their eggs in quiet areas. But yeah, so, and the other side I think is fine. It's got debris in it, but I think the debris is from the box. I don't think the moth ate outside. So yeah, just if you are packing up your stuff for a little while because you need to, live in a smaller space while you change houses or something, you might want to throw a couple of mothballs or cedar chips or whatever in whatever box you pack your brushes in. So I will put the scariest Halloween sight of the year away now. Just briefly look at, this is what I painted last week in the spirit of Halloween. So this is Casper von Monstein. He was the free money of the month last month, but I'm sure you can still go buy one because you could buy one last month. So why wouldn't you be able to buy one this month? So I did him in a monochromatic black and white color scheme, which allowed me for rarity to finish painting a miniature in a single session. So I'm going to try to remember to bring the scary brush back out for people who come in a little later too. It'll be our PSA for the day. So I have a lot of fun doing this, but it's also a good exercise in terms of exploring texture and value, which I talked about a lot about on last week's video, which is going to be available on Reaper's YouTube channel that I'm sure Quindy will share in the chat. This is, don't look at that guy, just look at this. I still have, as soon as I finish the show, I'm going to go order mine from Reaper. But Reaper has this Kathy Wapple miniature available in Bones USA right now as a charity fundraiser. Kathy Wapple and her husband Jim are very well known in the miniature community. She's battling cancer, which is tough on both of them. So Jason Wiebe donated the sculpt, and Reaper donated the time and materials to cast them. This one is from Dark Sword. This was, they did a smaller run of metal. But, so those are no longer available, but you can get it now in Bones USA from Reaper. And then everything beyond the cost of materials and stuff, or maybe, I don't know. There's some calculation of stuff that they probably talked about on Reaper Live that I haven't caught up on, goes to the Wapples to help them out. So, well, I'm just going to slap some paint on here. I don't know that I'm going to spend a lot of time painting this guy because I want to talk about what I've been doing this weekend, although I will share that. If you've been here before, you may have heard my story about how I had two of these visors. So I ordered a purple one and I paid extra to get a purple one because I like purple. And then I wanted to have a second one so that I could have two magnification levels easily accessible. So I ordered another one in gray and they sent me another purple one. And then I was only able to tell them apart because I happen to slot paint on this one. But my husband decided he needed a visor, so I ordered a blue one for myself, and he has one of my purple ones. So now I do have two magnification levels that I can easily tell at a glance. So I'm going to work on this guy a little bit, on the tentacles. I kind of just been having the urge to do some wet blending lately. I don't know if that ever happens to you. Like sometimes you want to paint a certain texture or color or something. But that happened to me. So these are the colors that I'm going to use. I kind of wanted to go down to this yellow. I even probably should do more of a color transition. Maybe I will start with the purple. I don't know. But I think this probably isn't as good coverage as this one. So I'm going to start with that. Because the thing about wet blending is you're rarely going to get it in one pass. You're rarely going to get complete coverage. So you either want to put some kind of base coat on or just accept that you're going to do two passes. So essentially, I'm doing to just get something on the figure part right now. And this miniature is also interesting because you can see there's a lot of in there bits of him. And I guess I should move things a little because we all know how the camera loves or doesn't love focusing when my palette is in the frame. And the brain part was painted in my Valentine's Day stream, and that's on the YouTube channel. I think there was a second stream too. I did a few different pink things. I did this guy as well, and then I worked on them both later. That's why they have some shiny bits. And then recently on my blog, I talked about complementary colors, which are colors that are across from one another on the color wheel. And the idea of choosing harmonious color schemes and stuff. And all these terms can kind of, especially if you aren't very familiar with art terms, sound like you're trying to make everything pretty, which if I'm painting a big gross brain monster like this, do I want it to be pretty? Probably not. But that's not what they mean. Those are, complementary colors are colors that excite one another. They look more interesting when placed. Each color looks more interesting when placed in proximity to the other. There are some very hard pieces to reach on this guy. I can't remember if I assembled him. I probably did, and I probably should have thought about whether that was a great move. So we're just going to be painting darkness probably in the middle. I'm going to get some of this red color and mix it with the green to get a darker version. Because that's another thing that complements do is they often work well to create shadows from one another. So I didn't pick a super dark green. I instead picked a darker purple because purple works with almost everything. And then a darker red. Kind of a reddish purple. I meant to tell you the colors. Let me just get a little more in this interior area and I will show you the bottles. Because interestingly, I think, well, it's hard to reach. You can actually see some of these places like from the front and stuff. It's not, a lot of times if you can't reach it, nobody sees it that much. So I just could throw black or blue liner or something in there. But I want to stay kind of color appropriate. So I'm going with this green and red mix that, let me just get a little bit on the outside here. You can see it's a brown. Quindy has also very kindly put the link to the Kathy Wapple miniature up in chat. So you can go get one of those. All right, that's probably enough for in there, and I will stop and show you the colors. So this is my darkest green is gobbler green. The middle green is olive drab. And then I want the tips of the tentacles to be this knoll pelt, but when I looked at it, it seemed like it was maybe a little on the transparent side. So I grabbed olive green, and I can start doing that and then work over it with this lighter color. So these are not what I would call pretty greens, and they don't, you know, the pinks and reds on this might be pretty taken in isolation if you're not considering the fact that it's a giant slimy brain. But my hope is that together it's going to look like those colors work together, but it's also going to look kind of gross and disquieting. So then I also picked up Sticks Purple for shading, and then what I'm using right now mixing with the green is this burgundy wine, which is kind of purple, kind of red. Dark red starts kind of looking purple. Even if you just mix black into red, I find that happens. All right, so I will try getting a little more color on here, and then while things dry, talk about my main topic for the day. So I may or may not get to doing much wet blending on this guy today. We'll find out. But I figured I could at least get started with the paint so that it's ready to go next time. So up here I'm going to do more of the gobbler. And I'm going to need a lot more paint. I did not think about the volume involved with this guy. And I'm not worrying about light and shadow too much right now. I want to establish the idea that the tentacles themselves start one color near where they meet the base of the brain, and then they transition in colors as they go down towards the edges. And since this is my first pass, I'm not really worried about blending it out. Let's try this yellow just straight up. Oh, maybe it's not as transparent as I figured. I will probably do something different with the little sucker pods. I'm getting some bubbling because I'm painting too fast. And being sloppy with my paint. Which, as you guys know, if you've been here before, you are not surprised by any of these things. But I can use my trusty weapon. So I kind of have an idea of what the color transition will like. I mean, it's not exciting, but I'm trying to make it look gross. Less than exciting. I mean, I want the focus to be more the brain. So this is compressed air, and if I just barely touch the trigger, enough air comes out to pop bubbles, but not enough that it blows paint around too much. Yeah, let's get just way more gobbler green. So hopefully everyone survived the time change okay. This is the easy one, I guess, since we get that hour back instead of losing like in the spring. But now, alas, the days grow darker earlier. Wow, this is like some kind of one of those in puzzles where I'm trying to figure out how to get something somewhere. I can see a white spot. How do I get to the white spot? I don't think an airbrush would help either. I'm not sure it would get into all those little nooks and crannies any better than I'm doing with physical brushes. Well, I mean, not that an airbrush is invisible, but the way it brushes is air. So I'm not worrying about how extremely janky that transition line between the middle green and the lighter green is. This is just to get enough green on that it becomes feasible to worry about janky lines. And I've spoken to several people, including, talented, skilled painters who did not, they had trouble with wet blending, and that was why, because they didn't realize that you needed to either do 2 passes or start with a, hold on, I got my lighter cup. Solid coat of something in the color range of what you were trying to do. And then do the blending part over it. Constantly looking for the hidden white bits that I am undoubtedly missing. The whole back of this tentacle. I'm using a very big brush and not a natural brush, so the moths will have no interest in it. Painting the base before I do this probably also have been a good move. I wonder if I have something around here that I can fake that with before I get too far. At least put something in the middle there. I mean, if it's just blue liner or something. What do I think the base is? I think it's probably gray or blue stone, which is not necessarily gray. But I want something fairly neutral put in there. So I'm going to get black. I think I'd rather have a cooler black since the green color is kind of warm. And then I will get a cooler light color and just make myself my own little bit of dark gray to put in there. I should use my holiday pokey tool. I have no idea if there's still any of those left. I mean, it's always a little Halloweeny when you're miniature painting, like because you're using vampire pallor. Trash is asking if I've played Flamecraft, and yes, I have. My copy finally came, but I played a friend's copy. They shipped by kind of order of complication, and his order was just the game, and my order was the game and many other things. So mine came much later, and I liked it. We tried it with the. I don't remember which color is which, but there's kind of like scoring goals. There's a simple deck and a more complex deck, and we tried it with the simple deck, and I definitely want to try it with the. I don't know that it's more complicated. I think it's just more varied, which I guess to some people would be more complicated because you kind of get a rhythm of they all basically work like this. It's just which thing do they want. I would like to play it again. Last night, my husband and I played a game called Astra, which admittedly we just bought. Well, not just. He did read up on it, but we have a friend named Astra, and she likes board games. So now we make all these jokes all the time about playing Astra and whatnot. it is a star-themed game. That's why it's named that. You're like looking at these constellations, and you're trying to fill in the stars, balance kind of different abilities, whether you want the ability of the card or you'd rather let somebody else get the ability of the card and you get the points. I liked it. We played it 2-player where you have to kind of have a, 3-player, third player robot kind of deal. And it works well enough. So I'm just trying to get enough of the base that hopefully no one will notice. Whatever I do around the rim, it will kind of look like it matches. I can probably get a wash in there if I need to. But now there's like a lot of wet paint. This is a new thing of Candair, and it's a little harder to control than my previous one. It's a little vigorous. Even when I was trying to dust things, it had the vapor come out very quickly. And it's like, well, that's not what I want. So I'm going to leave this and switch to the second thing I wanted to do today. We may return to Mr. Brain Legs. But I was having trouble deciding what to do today. Because my painting or hobby brain has been taken up with decluttering. Actually not doing projects, but I want to get my room in order. I feel like there's just too much chaos and I have too much stuff. So I spent the weekend going through, I went through unpainted miniatures, at least a lot of unpainted miniatures, the ones that are accessible to me right now and aren't packed away downstairs, a couple weeks ago. And that wasn't too painful, but that's still worth talking about. I know we have people from a variety of, the hobby's like a spectrum, and we're all in different places. Some of us have been doing this for years, if not decades, and I know some of you out there listening are in that group, and then other people, maybe you started doing this 3 months ago and you're like having too much stuff. I cannot relate. But if you have been doing it for years, if not decades, and you're not someone who moves house a lot, you probably have giant piles, giant hoards, huge amounts of things. Now, I'm not a clutter expert, unless your question is how do I have more clutter? Then I'm probably a good person to consult. But I've kind of read some things and whatnot in hopes of improving my own life. So I'm going to talk about some of the concepts and how I made some decisions. So I'm not going to talk about unpainted miniatures too much. We'll talk about it a little because, it's a thing that happens. So I don't, we'll just... The Marie Kondo idea of does it spark joy? That's absolutely a good place to start. And I would refine that in miniature terms to, do I really want to paint this? Like in the near future, say 2 years, 5 years, whatever you want to consider the near future. Do I really want to paint this? And I mean want, not do I think I have to paint this or that I should paint this. It's like, I bought this army and I painted like 3 guys and now I should paint the whole rest of the army, but you're not really that into it. That's not actually wanting to. So that should kind of go in a different pile. But like the ones you look at and you go, I love this. I want to paint this. Do I look at this boxing clown and feel that I love and want to paint it? I don't. Someone else might, because that's a very different kind of miniature. Do I have... So I did, because I did the unpainted ones a while ago. I don't have a lot of them around here. But we'll pretend this guy is unpainted, and I'll come back to him as a painted miniature later. So he's a little larger, and I'm saving some larger figures for as my eyes go, that I'll have larger things to paint. He's a little more expensive. He'd be harder to replace. So that's something else that I would factor in. This is actually, I don't know if you can buy this anymore, because I think the company that made it was, I want to say 12 Kingdoms. And I suspect that they don't exist anymore, so I would have to go to eBay or Noble Knight or something like that. So if I did like it, I might keep it. This is made by Reaper, and they make a lot of them. So if I get rid of this and then later I decide I need one, I know where to get one. It's the same with my Dark Sword figures. Dark Sword and Reaper are both really good about keeping everything except, extremely special edition figures in production. Sometimes you have to go on the website. You're not going to be able to get it from your store. But that I don't worry about that as much. That's not, a precious, irreplaceable treasure. So I can decide I'm not that into it. And if events transpire that I change my mind, I should not be horribly filled with regret. I'm just going to have to buy another one. So that's kind of the thinking process I started with on unpainted miniature. So do I really want to paint it? And then I might have secondary concerns, like I teach. I paint things for you guys. So sometimes I might keep something because like these don't look like, they're half painted. Am I ever going to finish painting that? No. But I'm not going to finish painting it because these were class miniatures and I could just repaint them and use them again. So because I have taught this class several times and I have fully painted examples that are useful, this is worth me keeping because I'm pretty sure that I will have occasions where I would use this again. Someone else might be making a different choice. Trash says, every Sir Forescale is precious, Rhonda. I'm calling the Forescale police. He was the only bones I had handy that was unpainted. So that is how, because he is so useful, that's how he ended up being the example. Because everything else I'm looking at, oh no, I did bring a couple of unpainted examples. So then, in terms of what I like to paint, for our game, my husband really likes having NPCs. So I'm more likely to keep NPC figures. I'm more likely to keep animals and monsters. For people, for characters, people like to pick out their own characters. So I'm not going to keep every single man-at-arms type figure that I might have. I don't enjoy painting them as objects in themselves. And I'm going to wait and let our players pick out their own man-at-arms rather than saying you must choose from these 6 guys that I have. Hey, Daffodweir. So I'm more likely to put those in the I don't want it anymore pile. What other factors would I take into consideration? So definitely the idea of, if you're doing the Marie Kondo thing where does it spark joy, that's legitimately, do you really want it? Not do you think you should want it, not did somebody else tell you should want it, not do you feel guilty for not wanting it. Those are issues that come up when you're decluttering and making decisions like that. And it's good to some of them are going to be easy choices and some of them are going to be a little tougher. I think you can kind of have an in-between pile. This is a tip I picked up somewhere, and certainly it seems like it would work with miniatures, although it was suggested as a general tip. Have a box. If you have something where it's like, well, I don't know if I love it, but it's kind of useful, and maybe I'll want it, and maybe I'll regret it if I get rid of it. It's gonna be that thing where 2 weeks later you want it. You put it in a box. You write the date on it. If a year later you haven't touched anything in that box, it doesn't mean that much to you, and you should feel okay about moving it along. So I didn't have too much trouble with the unpainted miniatures, other than I probably am keeping more than I would if my criteria were just, do I like this and want to paint this myself? Because I'm keeping things that are useful for classes, or things with different textures, or things that I might want to do on a show or something. So I had to kind of think about those things, and I have no idea if I made the correct decisions, but I at least thinned things down. Maybe I need to do a second pass and see where I am from there. So this little guy was from a board game. And I'm like totally just blanking. I know the game. I'm just blanking on the name. This was Simon back when they were still about miniatures at all. It was cool, beanie or not. And it's not anymore. It's actually Simon is like their official name. Anyway, they used to do a little convention in Atlanta, which is nearby. And they would do a paint and take. They'd just grab, seconds or half open boxes of the board games and prime the things. And I liked these little skeleton guys, but I painted one of them. Like I had 2 that I was working on there, and I painted one of them. And I just don't think I'm ever going to finish this guy. It's kind of like I already did this. So I'm going to pass on him. I am going to keep this guy because I just think he's super cool, and he's like an NPC that would fit well in the kind of games my husband likes to run. I don't know if I want to give my husband access to a punchy clown. That seems like I'm inviting very unpleasant encounters. And this guy I might actually keep him just because I used a couple of these to test the Reaper Super Washes, and I don't think I ever did the final version on them. So I may keep him just to have the third example, but I don't know. See, I'm talking myself into things. I'm supposed to be talking myself out of things. All right, let's look at some of the decisions where they get harder for me is stuff that is partially painted. So there's like a wide array of what those are, and that's, I'm gonna go through some of those things and talk about the decisions that I made. Santa is in a little baggie for reasons I'll explain later. And then this is just going to also show some, I'm going to talk about some of the classes I've taken, some of the classes I've taught. So I know this is like a weird topic for the show, but the feedback that I have from people who have commented is that you like when I do a variety of things. So I'm considering this to fall under the umbrella of variety. If you think this is very dumb and you don't like that much variety and there are specific things you would like me to do, you can contact me in the chat or in DMs or on the Reaper forums, not on Discord because I still don't look there regularly. Email me. If you go to my blog, there's that thing to contact. So I'm just going to start going through stuff. So these three have something in common. And she has to stay face down, so don't let me turn her over. In that I wasn't really trying to paint these miniatures in themselves. They were, I don't airbrush a lot. And these ones I painted when I was working on the Rockies. So Rocky, there's like Surprise Rocky, and I don't think I have a Rocky. Because I definitely kept Rockies. I do want to paint Rockies. But when I started painting them, I started with an airbrush, airbrushing in the basic color and the main, transitions from dark to light. And I wanted to test that on something else before I went on the figures so that I didn't mess up stuff I had previously done. So I used these guys as kind of my test. I did something very similar with this one. But so they were just tests, and if I were to paint these again, I'd probably, I've painted a lot of red dragons now since I had to paint 5 Rockies. I would probably want to paint not red dragons. I think I'd rather start with a nice new, white or gray copy of these. These ones were white. They probably come in gray now. And paint them very much not red. So these are going away. This one I'm less sure about. So I painted her in a similar way with the airbrush when I was painting the... What is his name? So it's the male fire Efreet, but he has a fancy name, I think. He comes in the box with there's an earth, an air, and there is a water guy. Yeah, there's a water guy. So I was painting the fire one. I painted the female Efreet Ziba previously, and I had done that all by hand, and the red was a little painful because if you make a mistake with the transition line, it takes a lot of paint to cover over it. So I'm like, why don't I start with the airbrushing and do a little less of that? So it was the same thing. I would every layer I'd airbrush on her first before I put it on him, and there was a certain point that I reached. In fact, I now realize that I could bring over him for you to look at. Hold on. Because you'll notice something straight away. If you compare the two of them. And that is that the transitions on the red go up a lot lighter on the guy who's so large I have to zoom out than they do on the test piece. And that was because at a certain point I started feeling like it was looking a little chalkier and I wasn't having as much control, so I wanted to do everything from that value lighter with the brush. So I stopped the airbrushing at that point and switched to physical brushing. And now you're going to see why isn't this guy in my display case in the living room? But why is he here in my work in progress case where he was so easy for me to grab? And that's because he's not done. And neither is the female. I do want to finish them, but the fire on her hair was just taking forever. And then the little thing on his skirt, and I had a deadline. But I do want to finish them because it does seem super lame that they look really great until you turn them around. So they're keepers. They're keepers to work on later. I'll put him over there because he's actually resin. So, do I want the thing I was practicing on? And I'm waffling on that. On the one hand, I think it does a nice job of showing you the value of value transitions, of how you create the volume by having the lighter color here and the darker color here. I figure I could also do a show where I paint up, do a little more of the highlighting with texturing. So you can kind of see I did that on the Reapercon Sophie's wings. There's some sculpted in here. There's actually a decent amount of texture sculpted in Reapercon Sophie's wings. So I wasn't adding something that wasn't there. I was just trying to accentuate the texture that the sculptor had put in. But you can also just create things that aren't there. So I could do something similar in this. So I'm waffling about whether to get rid of this or not because I could use it in a future episode of this. If I didn't do this and I didn't do teaching, I don't know that I would keep this. It's kind of like the little dragons. If I wanted to paint this figure, I would rather start from scratch and not have it, because I just glued it down to a base so that I had something to hold, and that was the end of that. So that's kind of the thinking process there. Speaking of airbrush, I still have this guy. This was like the very first thing I ever airbrushed. And I think it's nice and smooth and stuff, so I did all right that way. But it's a little, there's not quite enough. It's a little tentative. There needs to be more variety. I didn't do the mane or any of that. And I don't have a lot of horse or unicorn type figures, if that comes up as a topic of somebody wanting to know more about painting those. So I was thinking I would just keep this and maybe work it up a little further. Or just have it available as an example for horse type things. If there's anything you guys think you should talk me out of it. So this poor guy had a storied history. So this was from a company called Crunch Waffle, and they are now out of business. They did a lot of interesting miniatures inspired by different real life cultures and stuff. This guy was kind of Maori, I think. But no matter what I did, I could not get this arm to stay on. So and I'm like, there's a pin in there, and I used green stuff, and I used 2-part epoxy glue. It was like, it would seem fine, and then I'd start painting, because the skin is painted up to a fair degree, and then the arm would come off. And then I went through that whole process a second time, and then the arm came off. I took my medicine. I don't know why this is happening. So at that point, I took it as a sign, and he became my test if I have my spray sealer or spray primer. Because you always hear those stories about someone who accidentally primes their miniatures they're trying to seal. So that was his function in life, because he was partially painted. So if my sealer was frosting or whatever, it would also show me that. I rarely spray seal anymore, and honestly, just makes me sad. I would have liked to have painted him, so I'm just gonna get rid of this guy. I'll probably just take him to Reaper and let him melt him, since metal is so expensive now. So on the test topic, I have a lot of miniatures that I've used for testing. So I don't know if you can see that. This is a brocade pattern that I painted on. It's 2 figures, but they're sculpted so that you can kind of pose them so their hands are touching, so it looks like they're dancing or something. And the figures themselves were kind of terrible. So they're 54 millimeter, but they were super chunky, and the sculpt, like the surface, was not very smooth even after I put a ton of brush on sealer on it. So I decided the answer was just cover them in freehand and try to distract the eye from the fact that they were very terrible. So I was like, okay, can I sculpt can I paint brocade? So I looked up brocade patterns and picked this one, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to have to see if I can simplify it down to a point where, I'm not going to be able to include all of the elements from the brocade, but can I simplify it down and then repeat the pattern? And even though this test took a considerable amount of time, because I painted 2 repeats of the pattern, it was worth it to determine whether I could, and then to get sort of in my head, I'd be like, okay, here's a good way to paint this shape, and here's a good way to check that I've got, these roughly in the same place, that kind of thing. So I'm a big proponent for practice miniatures. This particular lady, I would probably not keep it just for that. I'm gonna take a picture of some of these, but I've got a painted version of her that I did for skin classes, and I'd like to do an updated version. So I will probably, fix the priming and paint over it, and do an updated version of her. This is a Dark Sword miniature. Some of my classes, Dark Sword is the sponsor for. But Reaper guys get the test thing too. So this, I painted him after I took a class in working metallics up from starting with ink. And you could get some neat color effects that way. He's kind of got a color shift from purple to teal, I think. And I have one of these that I did finish painting. And then I did all the metal parts on this guy, and apparently didn't feel like doing the rest. So I started using it as a test and practice. So I did a checkerboard, which honestly I don't remember ever painting on a miniature. So now I'm like, why didn't I? Maybe I decided to get, maybe I painted it on the practice guy and then decided against it. I might have been painting faux tile floor and then decided to do it with actual tiles. I don't know. And there's like some little, like a trefoil type thing I was practicing. And then these are leaves that I tested various different kinds of snow. I had a base that I was going to put a lot of snow on, and I wanted to see which type of snow I felt would look best on my figure. So I tested various methods. There's more little leaves. This is me trying to paint like a leaf cloak, sort of. Like, was there a way to not paint every little shape? And just do that. And I must have been into this idea. I feel like I still want to do it. Because I had a second one that I had done this on. Where did she go? I swear I was right here. Now I'm losing my mind. Because she was useful for a different meeting too. Well, perhaps I will find her later, and we will talk about that. I saw this right before I started the show, I swear. There she is. So she kind of tested a couple of different things. So that's the idea of the leaf cloak again. And then this one, that same figure that had the brocade, that was kind of for the outer dress. And then for the underskirt, I wanted some other distracting texture freehand type thing. So I was like, what about crushed velvet? How would you paint crushed velvet? And I did, I looked at some pictures. I did a real quick test on this, compared it to the pictures, realized, where I'd gone wrong. And I'm like, and this was like really quick. And I'm like, okay, I think it will work. That it's enough proof of concept that I think it will work. So that I do that a lot. And this figure could easily be repainted too. This is one I used to, another Dark Sword that I would use in OSL classes. I've since switched to, I don't like to pick something where the source slate is above, because that's too much like how we normally paint. So to make it tougher and make sure you really think about the light, I pick something. That's why I've been using this guy. That's what this was for. I did this at ReaperCon. I use his necklace because it comes from a different angle, so you can't just rely on your knowledge of where to paint things from above. What else have I got? This is a different kind of test. And I had another one of these. I don't know where she is. Because this is actually the less horrible one. Every few years, apparently, I get this urge to paint things in tropical colors. And luckily, I do it on a test miniature and realize that it's not a great plan. And then I don't wreck a real miniature. She was left over from teaching a hair class. So there I'm kind of torn. I think I have enough hair examples that I probably don't need to keep her. But then the question is kind of like, what am I going to do with these things that I don't want? And that one's a little tougher because my experience has been, I do like a paint and take at a local convention, or I have done. And even though like there's very little paint on this, it's not very thick. People just aren't going to want to paint this just because there's already a little bit of paint on it. My attempts to put partially painted things in the pool have never worked very well. What I'll do is, because it's for charity, they get 1 miniature a day for free, but if they want to paint again, I make them put in $1 or $2 or something. And then I have these off to the side and be like, well, if you don't want to paint anything or you can't paint anything, you can work on one of these ones that's got a little paint on it. When I take classes and stuff, I often like the teacher will give away their, like I probably should have done that with this one. They'll often give away the miniature that they worked on in class to someone in the class so that they have an example. And I've gotten a few of those and I found them very handy. I brought some figures like this to, not this ReaperCon, but I think 2019. And I had them in a pile on my desk that just said, teacher examples, take one if you want or something. And nobody did. So I guess not everybody likes that. Or I'd think about, would it be worth doing a giveaway where I just mail these off to people? If there are people who like the teacher's examples, I don't know. But probably I'll just put it in the paint and take thing for somebody who likes the figure enough to go with that one. But we'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments if you have an opinion. These are two little, one's a goblin, one's a kobold. And they were, when I do the quick paint kits or the full learn to paint kits, I always do like some test figures to make sure that the colors do what I want. And then I'm writing down like, okay, so I made this color like this so that I know for the instructions. And then I have to do like the for real one where I'm taking the step-by-step pictures and those go to Reaper. But I usually like to keep my test ones just because I don't know. They're fully painted and it's kind of part of the behind the scenes of the kits. I don't know how you put it. So I will be keeping these guys, but I'll probably just put them away somewhere. They don't need to stay out where they are seen all the time. And this guy is a similar thing. This is the most recent kit. Actually, no, this one is not a similar thing because I have one that I don't think this is the one. This is not the one from the kit. So I actually did 2 test versions and changed something up. Changed a couple colors up. So this is just like a fully painted guy. So he's just going to go in my stock of gaming miniatures for our games. And I'll keep the other one as here's a record of the miniatures that I painted for the quick kits. So then these are ones where we talked about the idea of, keep things that spark joy. And there's also like the sunk cost fallacy is usually where you will talk yourself out of getting rid of things. Or it's certainly a problem point for talking yourself out of getting rid of things. And these guys you may recognize, or you may not, as Pathfinder Iconics from Reaper. And these are in fact master castings that Ron wanted me to paint. And I'm not sure how many years it is since these came out, but at least 5, maybe 6, maybe 7. And clearly I have not painted them. And I don't want to. So the Pathfinder miniatures started getting so complicated visually. I mean, there's so many different little things on them, and that really slows me down when I paint. That when you paint for a fixed price, it just there was always some new thing that I wanted to paint more that I would actually finish. So these guys just sat on the shelf, and I'm like, I am never going to paint these. But I kept them as long as I did because of all this. I did all this prep. I got the mold lines off. I pinned them. I made little bases for them. So the amount of prep that I put in, once I've done that on a miniature, I have trouble getting rid of it. So if I prepped and primed it, I keep it for a long time. And that's the sunk cost fallacy. Like, because you already put time in, or money, or whatever resource, you keep putting it in, even if you don't like the thing, or the thing isn't adding value to your life. Like, you can do this with relationships. You can have that friend that, you just don't, you're not healthy for one another or whatever. But it's like, well, we've been friends 3 years. We can't give up. We got to keep trying. We got to, we've already made this huge investment. So I'm trying to get over that. That is a big problem for me, in decluttering in general, but in these miniatures in particular. So these are going to go back to Reaper, and Ron can melt them or try to get someone else to paint them or do whatever he wants with them. But I don't want them anymore in my life. They're great miniatures. If I haven't painted them by now, I'm not gonna. This is actually probably the first kind of teaching example type thing I ever did. I painted this image on the back of a figure's dress, and then I redid it on this little metal base and took step-by-step pictures and put up a web page that's probably still there somewhere. So I will probably keep this as my first successful freehand and first teaching impulse, and but it'll be kind of, I'm definitely taking a picture of it, but I will probably end up keeping it because it's not huge. This guy, I don't know. So this is painted with I want to say like jungle moss and heather moss, and there's like a, hey, Gomez Fury? I'm sorry, I'm terrible at figuring out how to say people's names. I got it on first strike. There, look at that. That's an unusual day. So for you and anyone else who might not have been here the whole time, I've been going through my miniatures, particularly the stuff on my like work in progress shelf, or like from classes I took or that I taught, and trying to decide whether I want it or not. There's just too much stuff. I need to have less stuff. It's mentally weighing me down. This one, I think, was me showing someone blending, and so it's that green triad, but it's purple in the shadows. So I came in after, and it's probably Imperial Purple, not this one, but it's a similar, it's not dissimilar value-wise, and Imperial Purple is just a little more intense, like more purpley, I think. And you can do some really neat things with that kind of idea. That's why I have, and he's very much still drying in the center there, but some of the tentacles are starting to dry a bit more, so I'll be able to apply the rest of the starting paint to him hopefully soon. But I don't know that I keep this. This is the kind of thing that I think someone might want as an example to study how somebody else paints, but I don't know how to get the objects to the people who might want that and get them out of my house, because it needs to get out of my house. Where this was me studying. So, is it NOH? I know, I was on this guy's Patreon. I don't think it exists anymore. Is why I'm not giving more specific information. I think he'd taken it down last time I looked. And he had a video. He was painting like a big bust. And it is good when you're following a tutorial that someone has done to have, if not the exact same figure in paint, something similar in scale and subject, similar kind of colors, that kind of thing. So I didn't follow all those rules doing this. But this was the first one I painted when I first watched the video. And I knew there was just something off about it. And then like a year or two later, I'm like, I want to figure it out. I'm going to go back and study it. So I watched the video again, and I tried to compare mine to his and realized that I just didn't have those super sharp highlights the same way. Like, I didn't have the highlights as shrunken down and as bright as they needed to be, so I painted a second version. And it's good to do that sometimes. Sometimes I will paint a whole figure again and kind of see if I've progressed. I have one of my early figures from the original Reaper Live paint kits. I think I talked to you guys about it, that I would like to do on the show. I just need to prep them a little more. I'd actually kind of like to do two. One that I follow the original color scheme as much as possible, and another where I'm like, well, if I was really painting this from scratch, how am I going to do it? But I don't know if that second one is important. So I am probably going to keep these because that was kind of like miniatures from attending a class, and it reminds me of something. Like I can look at this and it helps me remember the lesson. So that's the value of keeping miniatures that you worked on in a class, is if they help you remember the lesson. My apologies. I do not know what the problem is. I'm going to go take a little more medicine, I think. So I will be right back. Sorry about that. I haven't been having many problems lately, so I'm not entirely sure what's happening. But I guess that's why it's a chronic problem, because it keeps coming up. All right, what else do I have? I have a few things I kept because I figure I can use them for future programs. So I think I showed him earlier because these two are both from when I was painting pink. And I'd like to finish them. I'd like to paint the base. I just don't know that I want to paint this base. I think more is happening here than I wish to deal with. There's like a skeleton. I think there's probably some baby leeches. I don't know, and I don't want to figure it out. So I figure I will keep this and do an episode where I show how to extend a base or revise a base or whatever. And then one day I will be able to paint that base. Another one that I didn't end up keeping, although I have some other things that are similar to that. So she had a sword, and I'm not sure if it was because I was traveling with it. There might have been, sometimes there's just a little bubble or something in there. This is a metal figure. But anyway, I could feel it getting wobbly, and then eventually it popped off. And I thought about keeping it to show doing a repair, but that's a pretty fiddly repair to do on camera, plus it's not a Reaper miniature. So she's just gonna go somewhere else. Well, at first I debated like maybe giving her a whip or something instead of a sword. Something that would be easier to simulate. And when I was talking about miniatures that I would keep, of unpainted ones. So, I mean, I just like this guy, but it's also a really nice textured miniature to show dry brushing and washing, dealing with feathers, stuff like that. He'd make a very good demonstration figure. Maybe I'll paint him on stream sometime if you guys would like. He's a chunky boy, just like my cat. Maybe I should paint him like an orange tabby owl bear. That makes sense. And then I could not possibly get rid of a dire cabbage because it's a dire cabbage. I mean, that is just super cool. I like that. This is another one that seemed like it'd be good for showing people texture, or this might be nice for a stream just to do like totally wacky colors on. Daka Flocka Flame. Dire Cabbage is my favorite Bones 5 miniature. I mean, how can you not love him? He is very dire. And there's some neat, like, you know, you could do like a purple. There's like fancy looking cabbages. You can do a fancy cabbage for a painting experience. This one I kept for a future show. So way back in the day, I was going to have a Nef Sokar army. And then I realized that getting the mold lines off of mummies made me want to die a little. In fact, I didn't even get all the mold lines off the mummy. So as much as I like the miniature and the colors that you'd be able to use for that, I gave up this concept. But I had prepped this one guy up, I guess, and I put a little beetle on there with him. That seemed very Egyptian-y. But I think you can see that the base construction on this was maybe not 100% amazing. So I kept this so I can use it as an example of how can we make this a little better? What can we do to integrate these two pieces into a base more so that they look like they're actually there and not sitting on piles of Jello glue or something. So that will be a future stream. What else do I have here? That some things they're partially done, and I feel like I should just actually finish them someday. Like, I don't hate how this miniature was going. I just got distracted and never finished it. And I feel like, that's some nice hair. I would have fun painting that. So I'm going to try to... Why is there a strange bug on my computer all of a sudden? This one was kind of tough. So this is... I used this for my character in the game that the Reaper artists play for a long time. Her face isn't terrible. Sometime after I had done some of the initial painting, because it was never finished, Michael Proctor very kindly made this base for me. But I play a halfling, and everyone kept forgetting and thinking she was a dwarf because of this figure. So eventually I picked a different figure that is a halfling. And I don't think I want to go back and paint this figure. So it still seems kind of like, well, what am I just throwing it out then? And I'm like, well, yeah, if I haven't painted it in these several years, I'm probably not gonna. It's okay to throw it out. It's not, or give it to somebody. Or there's a after school group that does D&D here, and they were asking me for miniatures before, so I'll find out if they want only somewhat painted miniatures, as well as painted or unpainted miniatures. And if not, I'll just put it in the paint and take pile. I was painting this guy, I think at during Reaper Virtual Expo, and I was trying to use the Zorn palette. So the Zorn palette is oh, hold on, Graphic Wolf has a comment that's familiar sounding. I've got about 7 canvas and mini projects partly done. Sometimes I need to step away for a bit and come back to figure out what I want to do next or how. And I do know, absolutely. Sometimes you got to step away. I'm looking at figures where I've stepped away so long that am I ever stepping back? Like, sometimes if it's been too long, it's kind of hard for me to get back in the groove with that figure. Like, I'd rather just start from the beginning than try to figure out where I was. It's like when Netflix is like, you've been watching some show and you're like halfway through an episode and then hot new things come out and you watch those, and then like 6 months later you come back and Netflix is like, do you want to start at the beginning of the episode or do you want to start from where you left off? And you're like, you know what, I want to start at the beginning. It's been too long. I can't start in the middle. So these, I definitely have some examples of that. This was the other figure in the Learn to Paint kit, with the one that I finished and that I want to repaint with you all to kind of see how I would do it now. How would I do it now? And I painted, I think, the skin, and then I took a class about using like funky colors to highlight and shade, and I painted the pants, and I liked those things, but I leveled up somewhere around here, and it was like, well, do I go back and kind of touch him up and fix him? Do I start over? Do I just quickly finish the parts that I haven't painted yet? And I think it's been about 15 years, so I think I need to just admit that I'm not into this figure and that I don't feel that it's worth finishing. That there are too many other things that I have to finish. Even now I'm wavering. Like I was all like, no, I'm not going to do it, and now I'm wavering. But sometimes I take old stuff and go through with you like if I were giving it a critique after the NSP Open at ReaperCon, or somebody asked me after a class or something, and then I paint over it to show how would I improve it. But this guy doesn't even work for that because he never got finished. So I don't think I feel the point. This one I just hate. Like, I just hated how it was coming out. So the Zorn palette is, you have black, white, ochre, yellow, and a really vivid red, and it's popular as a limited palette exercise with portraitists for canvas. And I thought, well, it'd be fun to try it on a miniature. And I just hate, no, I hate him. Like, he's going in the trash right now. There, he's actually in the trash. That is how much I hate that miniature. And that is okay. It's okay to feel that way now and then. I'm not going to beat myself up about this. This one I'm a little sadder about because I got pretty far. I mean, I did the skin, I did the claws, and I didn't do the feathers or the outfit. And I had sculpted this base that I kind of wanted it to be like the painted desert. And so I was going to paint it all like similar colored pinks and ochres and stuff that are on the figure. But I just never got back to it. And now I went through all of my stuff and I can't find her wings. Now I know I could just get wings from Reaper. But it's similar. It's like, well, if I went back and painted this now, I would probably paint it a bit better, a bit different. I'd have more color variation on the scales, stuff like that. But it's not done enough to use as an example for you guys. So it's like, what do I do with it? I think I just admit that I'm not going to finish it. I think I'd want to take that base idea and remember that. These ones were like, I for a couple of years I had this like cool idea to paint ghosts, and they were just to be sort of faded, I think. I don't know, but I thought it was a cool idea. And I made like, I do like this base, and this one is another one where I might keep it as a how do I fix this base, because you can see there's like a ledge where I attached it that is not covered over at all, and yet I started to paint. And I like these. This was, oh, what is that? So there were like these wood shaving things that when we bought the China, so like for my wedding, we registered for China, and when they shipped it to us, it had these like wood shaving things in it. So I cut them down and used them as like marsh leaves. Plastic card would probably work even better. And then these, I don't think I knew about plastic card when I did this. They're surprisingly sturdy, considering like this is probably 18 years old or something. Maybe not that long. 16, 17 years old. I did not intend to paint a ghost with fishnet stockings, just so we're clear about that. That was me practicing again. It's like I had the figure, I had another figure I needed to paint fishnet stockings on. This let me practice to, how would I apply it over, surfaces that curve and stuff, and keep the pattern fairly even, keep the spacing between the lines even and stuff like that. So I always think it's worth practicing that kind of thing, and to practice it on something that's as similar to the figure you're going to paint it on as possible. But, so I thought I might keep this. We can work on the base. Maybe I can try doing my ghosty idea, or do a different ghosty idea. But she might be worth painting. This one, I like the idea that I had. So the idea is that, someone buried him under the floorboards, and now he's like haunting that spot. And I like the idea and this part, but then I don't know. I needed to make it seem like the mist was coming up out of the cracks or something. I don't know. I didn't quite achieve what I wanted to achieve here, and it's far enough away that I don't feel like I can fix it. So I don't think we're going to continue with him. Who else do I have? Speaking of practicing freehand, so I will often use the bottom of the larger bones miniatures, or you can paint a base. And what Egyptian thing was I doing that I needed? I don't remember ever actually painting an Egyptian thing, but maybe I'm just forgetting. So I was trying to do like a spell book sort of thing there. I think I looked at real like medieval manuscripts or something. I wish I could remember what I wanted to do the Egyptian stuff on. Oh, this I was trying to do like maybe the pages could have something Cthulhu on it. It was someone. She was summoning something, so I was trying to find, um, evil looking things that could be in her summoning book. I think I ended up going with something like these in the end. That was too big. And I must have painted over some Egyptian thing that had been there with the color that I was using on the spell book for that one. This is one, I mean, if we dug down, I'm not sure how many layers of skin would be on this one or on this one. Because these both are from before Bones. Like, Bones is nice to have. Because before then, I had, like, just these few figures that were left over from class or that I had, prepped and not painted or whatever. I had a handful of figures and I would just use them over and over and over again. So there's probably an untold number of layers of paint. On both, you can see that whatever the last thing was I was testing, I didn't bother to paint her hands. But that is from one of the Pathfinder miniatures. She's like a little halfling in a blue cloak. And that was me practicing the pattern that was in the very lovely Wayne Reynolds art, which you can't get all of the freehand from that. And those runes were around her hood, I think. And then this is this is on the Texas Sophie. So it's one of the ReaperCon Sophies, and she's like very Western Texas type look. And she had, in the concept art, she has this on her arm, but it's not sculpted on the figure. So I was practicing painting that in. This was probably me attempting to be more realistic scale with the fishnet and deciding that I wasn't there yet. But then many years later, this is the pattern. This was another one of the Pathfinder miniatures. She's kind of floating. She looks like she's wearing a sari, and it's cleverly sculpted. She's floating up on like one of the ribbons that comes down from her belt or something. And this pattern was on the belt, which it's Wayne Reynolds art. I had to simplify it down to something that I could have a hope of doing. I think that's all I ended up testing there. I mean, I painted her face for some reason. Now it's scratched off. It's nice to have Bones because I can go get a figure that has like the same kind of folds in the cloak or a similar pose in the legs or whatever, for the fishnet stockings, that kind of thing. It's nice to have so many more options now. So yeah, the way back in the day, we didn't have Bones. So this guy, I mean, he was just called Test Elf for a long time in my head. I mean, that's not what Reaper calls him. I'm sure that he has a name in the catalog that is not Test Elf. And the way he started is, I was doing the non-metallic metal learn to paint kit, which is what this leg is. And I might have told this story on stream before, I don't know. Anyway, I tried it and I hated it, and I literally actually cried. So I know what it's like to get frustrated and not like what you do. And now I don't know why I made the poor choice to not go back to the instructions and reread. I happened to be looking at this a couple of weeks ago or last month for writing a blog article and realized that there were things that I later figured out about non-metallic metal that were in the instructions. If I had gone back and read it again and tried again, compared mine to like what I did with the other guys that I was showing you for non-metallic metal. I sat down and I studied. I compared the result I got to the work of the person I was trying to follow. I rewatched the video. I tried to identify what was different. What had I not done? What did I do maybe that I wasn't supposed to do? I didn't do any of those things with this. I just got frustrated and gave up, and that is not the correct answer. It's okay to get frustrated. You leave it a few days. But to try and to really learn about it, you have to come back and try to study it. There is freehand that I can barely see, so I don't know if the camera's going to get to see it. On his scabbard, both of his scabbards. And I don't think whatever I was trying to do there ended up getting applied to a miniature. That was me practicing tiny lettering. That was a particular pattern that I think did get applied to a miniature. But yeah, back in the day, I just had these like handful of figures that were on my paint desk where if I had to test something or whatever, I'd use those. But now, happily, we have the bones. This one I'll probably keep because everyone goes on about, zenithal and slap chop and all of these things where you're painting over like a grayscale or a gray foundation for stuff like contrast paints and super washes. Everybody's talking about like this is new. But first of all, traditional artists have been doing it forever, but miniature painters have been doing it a long time too, because this is at least 17 years old from a class that I took at Gen Con. Like the paint that this class was promoting isn't even available anymore and hasn't been available for like 10 or 15 years. So not a new idea, a good idea, but not a new idea. This guy was from a class that I took, and I think I will keep him because this is a very interesting idea. I think part of the, what the person was talking about is when they work on commission, when they do like armies and stuff, they're painting like a lot of figures. They don't have time to go in and do like the really extensive transitions between dark and light to create the volumes, make things look 3D. So they use contrasting colors a lot. I was talking to you about how I was using red in shadows on the green thing that may be dry enough to continue with. And that's what we did in the class. So it's like green and the highlights are green, but then the shadows are red. I think we could pick whatever color we wanted. Somewhere I have one where I shaded orange with just like straight up blue, and it looks kind of weird, but it also works surprisingly well. I mean, I didn't mix it in or whatever. I just went over the orange with really thin down blue. This is one I wrestled with keeping, of whether this would also be a can I fix it and make it better class. Of course. I mean stream and then maybe paint it. So this is at ReaperCon. They have the bones mashup, and they just have like a big table full of bones, and you cut them up and you glue them back together in different ways. And they made some of us do it on stream one time, and that's what this guy is from. And I have another one that's like a little mouse that I put wings on, and him I want to paint for sure. This guy I wasn't sure about. I feel like I'd need to fix this mohawk type thing a little bit, and then actually attach him. This is supposed to be like a base or something that he's on. I don't know. But do I want to try to, take this idea and then see if in my limited sculpting way I can turn it into something that looks like it's an integrated creature rather than me clearly slapping random parts on there. I don't know. If that sounds interesting as a stream to you, let me know and I'll keep that. It's a little on the fence right now. What else do I have? I don't have a lot of zenithal prime things, and it's useful for, I haven't tested it out with superwashes that much, so a friend of mine was using this to teach their class, and they had one left over, and they gave it to me. He's not zenithal primed on the back. I think it was for OSL, so it's probably supposed to only, this is the light source. And then he's just straight up dark on the back, because also that's going to make it faster to paint a class. But I could probably just do a little dry brushing. So I want to goof around with that, so I am going to keep that. I'm sure this is also from a board game, but do I remember which one? No, I do not. Because I don't think I have that board game. I waffled on this guy. Because I think the figure's a lot of fun. And I think some of my paint is okay. But I like how the worn leather look of the cloak. And then the general color choices here were alright. I don't think the fish works. I don't think it looks real. So I waffle back and forth on this one, but I think I do want to finish this up sometime. This board game, I do know what it's from. It's Rum and Bones. And then before that was a board game. It was actually like a miniature skirmish game. Now this one looks like something I should be keeping and putting in our game pile, but I am not because of that. So what this actually is I think right before the first the core skills learn to paint kit came out, we had to change one of the colors. It wasn't like, was it the black? It wasn't like a dramatic color shift. It wasn't like this color is massively different than that color. But because the instructions are very specific, where it's like add this amount of water for the washes and stuff like that, I had to paint them enough to test that all of that was still true, or did I need to change the ratios and stuff. So I painted like a number of the figures, but I was trying to be as quick as possible, so I just painted the fronts. So I have like 5 of these things. Not just the orc. I mean, I have the pirate, the rogue, the orc, the skeleton. Yeah, the Mengu. I probably have 6, because if I did every figure, I would have had to do 6. I might have redone the wizard the whole way. Or I might have just ended up painting over that, because I love, that guy is like my favorite figure to show blending on or practice blending on. Make other people practice blending on. What's his name? Enurian Elf Wizard. I think he's got the very rounded. I'm surprised I don't have one here. I think I was going to turf all the ones that had paint on, so I didn't even keep them over here. But he has those rounded folds that are the tough ones to do. So this was I think I was testing different paints on Bones, maybe? But this is like literally every kind of paint that I had. Like that's Liquitex something or other. And like it's every brand of paint that I had, including art brands. And it's interesting to see the differences in the finish, because man, is that shiny. So I'm pretty sure that's an art brand. But then there's a similar color, and that's probably Reaper paints, where it's not shiny at all. I was testing durability, I think. So after I painted it, I think I was, going over it and trying to see if paint would come off. I had written down everything I did. Hopefully I have that somewhere. That red is also super shiny. So all the very shiny ones are like the art store acrylics, because they don't care about being super shiny the way we do. And anything else interesting over here? I don't know. I've gone through all of the kind of examples of all of my dilemmas. This is one of the more recent things. I mean, no, I didn't actually work on this on stream. I worked on this at ReaperCon. But this is with the super washes. And it's close enough to done that I figured I'd like to finish it. This was also with the super washes, and I realized that literally everything else on here would be like metallics, and I just don't care enough. I don't think. It's not done enough. But I like her, and she's almost done. So I probably will still mess with that one. But alright, let's see how my tentacle monster is doing. It's still a little wet on the base, but I think I can work on the main body of the tentacles. This is my nice piece of paper though, so I'm gonna switch over to the paint one. Although I think I'm about to just throw this one out and change the other one to be the paint paper and get a new nice piece of paper. So if any of you have suggestions for how you've made decisions about do you want to keep something or not, clearly I could use some help. Maybe I've kept too many things, or if there's stuff you'd like to see in a show. Daka Flocka Flame. I'm probably going to wait for a warmer month to order the superwashes, but I'm definitely interested. I think what they have now is what's in stock, which is not even everything. I don't think they have all the colors anymore. This was like a trial run. They are not making more of this. They're looking for feedback before they decide whether and how to proceed. I would also say it's because I have a blog post about frozen paint, and I've been thinking about updating it. Speaking of paint, I think the paint on my palette got kind of watery while we were looking at stuff, which is weird since I didn't put the lid on. But for wet blending, you want not watery. But I did have a couple of years ago when there was a snowstorm, I had just ordered something from Reaper and it included a bunch of paints. So it was 2 fast packs, and I think there were 2 or 3 loose paints. And when it arrived, like I could see from the shipping that it was spending some time in non-optimal conditions. So I went through everything when it arrived. And one of the paints was absolutely extremely frozen damage. It was like thicker than cottage cheese, I think. But the rest of them were fine. So exposure to freezing temperatures isn't automatically a death sentence. I mean, absolutely, you don't want to take the risk if you don't have to. But in this case, I guess you kind of have to decide between, do you want to try the superwashes or just wait until they figure out if they're making them for real or whatever. But it's always, and it was a similar thing. Like, I didn't realize the very first Learn to Paint kit I bought way back in the day, because I didn't know anything about anything at that time. The yellow paint was very gritty, which is what less extreme exposure to cold damage will do rather than the full cottage cheese experience. And I didn't realize, I also didn't know at that time that I could have contacted Reaper and gotten a replacement for it. I think I just went and bought a new one at the game store so I could finish that paint kit. Well, okay, finish the first figure. I still have a half-painted rat somewhere that actually restarted. I like half-painted the rat and then primed it over and restarted it several years later and still didn't finish it. But it was a similar thing in that situation, which I think in that case it had been stored improperly in the distributors when it got exposed to cold. But it was only 1 out of the 8 or 10 or however many were in there that were affected. There was nothing wrong with the others. And these were propanes. These were screw tops, not dropper bottles. Not that that makes any difference to freezing, I don't think. But I don't know if there's just some colors that are more sensitive. It's entirely possible. Pigments are weird little special snowflakes like that where everyone is different. Or if it was, that one was at the very edge of the package or something. But in the more recent thing with the cottage cheese one, none of the paints that were in the fast packs were affected. It was one of the paints that was loose. But there were other paints that were loose that were fine too. Daka Flocka Flame. Get a storage unit. Move yourself into the storage unit. The house is for the biddies now. My husband has apparently decided that the house is for the board games now, because there's a problem there too. And it's, miniatures being smaller than board games, I can always come out looking better in the do we hoard too much sweepstakes that we both have won. But it's kind of the mental space that I want to get rid of some of this stuff for. It's less than the physical space. I do want physical space. I want to be able to have everything I need and use often here, where I paint most often, and then put stuff like my giant tub of static grass somewhere else, just have like a little container that's here and keep the giant tub somewhere else and then refill it later, kind of thing. I say I have those Woodland Scenics. It's like if you go buy the jumbo size spice thing at the grocery store, it's the exact same kind of plastic, those square plastic containers. It will take me a long time to use that much static grass, especially since I like hardly ever use static grass. I like grass clumps. Grass clumps are a genius invention. And I like them so much better than static grass, but I'm sure there will be times when I want to accent something with static grass, or I want to glue it on something and pretend that it's fur. I've seen people do that. You can prime it and then paint it. Try to make something furry. Alright, I'm going to risk my thing again. If you weren't here earlier, I like to get the compressed air, and you'd have to press the trigger just a little bit and it'll pop the bubbles. If you keep your airbrush hooked up to your compressor running, that definitely works for this too. But I don't, especially when I'm streaming, because it would make quite a loud noise that you don't want to hear. I don't even think I want to hear it. So that brown is the green mixed with the super dark red. Like we were talking about complements for shading earlier. And I was doing it on here just in a different way than in that class figure that I was showing. And I got the brown on the end, but this is just the first pass, so I'm not going to worry about it. This is just to get some color down so that if I am trying to make nice blends, it will work better. And now I guess I should assess, do I think that color even works with the guy? And I think it does. I think maybe it seems like a lot of dark, but I'm only doing the color shift, so it's not, then there's going to be highlighting and shading on top of that. But out of interest, I want to check what it looks like going from the purple to the middle green. It's a little more interesting. I think it might be. Might have to wait until that dries to know for sure. That purple might have gotten a bit watered down too. So get more, and I chose a somewhat dull purple, sticks purple, and then the red I was mixing to get the darkest. So mixing with the darkest green to get even darker was burgundy wine, which is an excellent color for mixing shadows with in general. And I might still use it for that, but I think for the transition, this purple idea might be kind of fun. I can do this side with the purple. Spin around, look at the other side, and kind of do a comparison. And I'm not really trying to improve the blend here. I'm just trying to adjust the amount of purple that is shown. I do have to do the so that'll take a while to dry, but overall, like, see, that to me just looks kind of dark and murky, and that's still murky, but there's like it's just a little more interesting to look at. So I think And then because there's like yellow green, like yellow in the green that's on the ends, that's going to play off the purple and emphasize the contrast between the tips and the base, I think. Anyway, that's my theory. And then I have to ponder what color to use for the shading and highlighting to keep the color transition separate from the kind of value shape transition. Okay, Gomez Fury loves it. Oh, excellent. Then we will keep going with this purple. I will put some on the other side. I'm not going to go back in the middle that much, I don't think. I put a lot of that dark red in there. But I don't think you guys want to watch me spin this around as much as it took to... I was getting dizzy watching me spin that around. But yeah, I think the purple's helping the gross factor, which I definitely wanted to keep happening on here. Because that was part of the point is that of this was to show first, I mean, I did the pink part to show that pink doesn't have to be pretty. And then this part, I was working on the idea that complementary colors, it doesn't mean prettiness, it means they work together. And then purple just works with everything in my experience. So. And maybe I will use the red for the shading, and that will help keep things distinct. That this tentacle is going to be the tricky one. It's like an awesome sculpt, the way that that curves under, and you get all this movement and stuff. But it's one of those things that's like, oh golly, that's interesting to have to paint. Especially since that means I have a lighter edge in an area that's more, or a lighter, end of the tentacle, in an area that is more visually apparent. Where making that darker would cover up if I messed up a lot. A little purple into that, which hopefully also help it seem a little more seamless. Even though there isn't supposed to be purple at the very end, I don't guess. Then I think this part needs to be lighter than it is. That is one very long tentacle, I think. So this is kind of the foundation of the wet blending, and I will do more actual blending on another show. Yeah, I think mixing that purple in gives it a nice sickly thing happening. Then I have to ponder what to do with the suckers. Maybe the suckers should be all purple. We'll kind of integrate it in a different way. Or I could bring back some of the pinks from up here. That might make sense to kind of tie the overall thing together. And then these, maybe they will just be the lighter green. But that is definitely a not to work on it now problem, because I'm working on these tentacles, I would get all kinds of stuff on those ones. Probably should figure that out too. But I just don't know enough about giant brain monsters to make all these color decisions. Although I guess giant brain monsters can be whatever color we want them to be. That is normally my philosophy. I mean, not just with giant brain monsters, with all the monsters. Now, Ron disagrees with me quite strenuously sometimes about things can be whatever color I think they should be. Dakaflock Flame says the brain monster is looking awesome. Thank you, Daka. Yeah, I'm pretty... like that purple really added a little creep factor to it that I like. It was just a little too uniform. Before, and this is like a nice organic creature, like I might not even have to fix the blending that much. If we start doing like highlights and shadows over that, it might kind of take care of the parts that are... let's see, I'll probably do a little, just if nothing else, to make sure that there is enough paint on everything. A nice solid paint layer. You all know how I feel about having a nice solid paint layer. Very important to me. I'll do just a little more of the purple kind of coming down the inside. A little creepier. And you don't have to do this kind of color thing through wet blending. There's, glazes are a nice way to do it if you don't like wet blending, or you don't like mixing strange colors with one another. I probably more often do this kind of thing through glazing. I may be getting a bit of a different effect by doing it this way. Get right out of my lighter color now. I did. And I should probably just mention the colors briefly for people who came in later. Oh, and also show you the scariest Halloween thing I saw this year. Because I show that to people at the beginning, but we should scare everybody. This PSA. Alright, he's pretty wet, and he's probably at the stage where I should stop touching things. I'm going to leave that and go over the colors. So, if we look at them on the palette... so this was the burgundy wine right here. And you can see it looks redder on the palette than in my little swatch. And then here's where I mixed it with green and created kind of a brown. And that was what I was using for kind of the darkest color. This I mixed up to put on the... I realized that there was some of the base was in the middle of the tentacles, so I just mixed that up to put that in there. This is the purple that I've been using, which is Sticks Purple. The darkest green, which I've ended up not having a lot of on, if I'm using the purple kind of for the base, I'm going next to that one. But this is Goggle Green, which is a great color. I just don't think I need it for the revised way that I'm approaching this guy. I do need another cough drop, sorry. But so then I've been going from the Sticks Purple to Olive Drab. Is that one. And then I was concerned that this color wouldn't cover very well because it's my little swipe to show coverage. That's actually been doing really well. And this is Knoll Pelt. I brought this one out. I was going to use for like the foundation. This is a good color. I just want more of that yellow. But it turns out that I don't need to use a foundation. So eventually I will get the Spooky Brain Monster finished. I guess that's supposed to be an eyeball, but I have to ponder what else that could be painted as. No, maybe it'd be fun to do an eyeball. But it might be fun to do something else too. So yes, definitely needs more work, and I keep getting the temptation to touch it, so I'm going to put that down again and take the paint away so then I can't mess with it and show you Halloween things. So if you were here last week, you saw me paint this with, just black, white, and gray colors. And if you didn't see that, I'm sure it's still here on Twitch too, but it's also up on Reaper's YouTube channel. There's a Beyond the Kit playlist. And until this episode gets posted, this one where I painted this guy will be the most recent episode. I talked a lot about textures. I used different brushes to do the leather and stuff. So this is my new Halloween tradition, I guess, is painting a like a monochromatic miniature. I did a like blue-green ghost lady last year. But the scariest thing I saw on Halloween last year, because this decluttering thing is not just my paint room or my miniatures and stuff. I'm going through other things, and my husband brought this box up that was from the old studio. And it was mostly just a box of boxes, so it was like a couple of fancy boxes that trophies came in, and then just small boxes that I kept in case I had to ship stuff. So most of it I ended up throwing out, but as we got to the bottom of the box, we found this paintbrush. This is a weird double-ended paintbrush. It's not a great paintbrush, which is good, because then you're not going to feel too bad when I show you this. So let's make sure we zoomed all the way in. This paintbrush started out looking more like that, like it does on the other side. And it was pretty easy to figure out what happened, because there was a dead moth in the box. And this is a natural hair brush. Moths will eat natural hair brushes. And I now have sad, scary proof of that. So if you do have to pack some stuff away in a storage room or whatever, I would recommend that you put some kind of, and you have some sable brushes or whatnot. I mean, probably the same thing would happen with squirrel or goat or whatever. Other hairbrush. I would put some kind of moth deterrent in there with the brushes. So that was very interesting, because I had heard that moths would eat natural hair brushes. I'd never seen it, and now I definitely have. So this brush is perhaps serving me better in death than it did in life, because it's a nice example. I'm going to try and get a good macro picture of that too. So, it's a bit early. Do I have something else I could paint? I don't think I do. But these tentacles are not dry enough. Do I have other things I could show you from my keep it or lose it stash? Well, so this was a miniature where I remember the class. I remember the point of the class. This one, I do not. So, like, I've had this so long that I no longer remember what the class was, who taught it, or what the point was. I'd be guessing if I said anything. So I don't think I'm going to keep this one, because I don't think that this gives me information I didn't have otherwise. I'm sure I still have notes from this class, but Bello Grisio, where I'm just particularly good at naturally destroying my brushes anyway. Well, at least you get to use them while you destroy them. I mean, if the moth destroys them, then that didn't help you or your minis, it just helped the moth. I mean, the way we paint is gonna, like, no brush is gonna last forever. there's some stuff we can do to try to take it a little easier. I mean, you don't want to stab if you can avoid it, like, pushing into these little crevices. That's when I use this kind of brush. I mean, I like this brush. This is a good brand of synthetic brushes, but I accept that at some point, the tip's going to curl and fray and whatever else. So I'd rather do that kind of thing with one of my synthetic brushes than with my sable brushes, but it's like I will use the sable brush for metallic details because I don't think it's that damaging. Oh, I didn't show this. So this figure is two different things. So I think Michael Proctor painted this. Either he had it left over from a class where he was demonstrating shaded metallics, or he was showing me specifically shaded metallics. Because I was very bad at metallics when I first hit. Bella Grisio used to be Gray Mouser. What happened? Why don't you want to be Gray Mouser anymore? You don't like being called Gray? He probably was trying to show me how to do shaded metallics because I was terrible at it. But then this was me practicing. If you go to the Dark Sword, I think it's just darkswordminiatures.com site, there's a geisha figure, and I painted this pattern on her kimono, but I kind of wanted to work out what colors would work on the darker and the lighter, and that kind of thing. And then I have no idea why her hair is teal. I'm sure I was doing something. But and then this was like one of the last conventions before COVID that I went to. I think like I was at a convention when they declared pandemic shutdown. That was interesting. So then I'm like flying home and the airport is practically empty. It was like this really weird, surreal experience. But before all that, while we were still enjoying the convention, Aaron Lovejoy was showing how he paints on metallic metal, and so he had me paint this along with him. So I probably will keep this as an example. The other interesting thing about that convention is you could kind of see the progression of because we got there. I think I got there Tuesday night because they had the people who were doing instruction stuff come in a little early, so they didn't have to deal with this later. And we were going out to dinner and stuff because that's it's not like you can cook in an average hotel room. And everything was normal. And then by 2 days later, we went to IHOP or something, and there's no more syrups out on the table. They're bringing everything, although individually wrapped packages of everything. And then by the end, I'm in the airport alone. And it was like, here I am doing the exact same thing they told you not to do. But it's like, well, I gotta get home so I can do the thing they told you to do at home. I can't live in this hotel forever. And I mean, I know we didn't know anything about it then, but I isolated for 12 or 15 days after I got home, just in case I had been exposed to something at the convention or at the hotel. But anyway, we know more and we know less now. Bella Grisio is still gray, but just in case for possible future branding. You may have to remind me again. I'm so bad with names, and then we have to match someone's real name to their username to their face. It's like, oh, this is asking a lot out of my poor sad brain. And so if I ever look at you blankly, it's probably because I'm trying to remember your name or something. It doesn't mean I don't know who you are. It means I don't necessarily have all the nouns put together. This was a guy I painted for a quickie non-metallic metal class at one of those CMON Expo things. And I like him. I think he's a really, it's a cute concept for a goblin. And I kind of, I kept him because I wanted to paint him, but I think I have to admit that's not gonna happen. There are too many other things to paint. Bella Grisio, I haven't had the fortune to meet you in person or be significant in any way, so it's okay. Black Skull 1965. I usually quarantine after a con anyway, just to ensure I didn't catch con crud. Yeah. Indeed, I did catch con crud this year, and it was not good crud. So I'd shown these guys and I attached them to their base. Well, this guy didn't get attached, but and I think there were two others of these figures that I must already have given up on. Or there was some other thing, but I had these, and they've got the pinholes in them, and I blocked the section off where the feet are when I primed them, so that I'll be gluing surface to surface. If you can, that's good to do. But whatever project I had in mind, I didn't use these for, and these are like precast resin bases, so I'm absolutely going to keep these and just fill in that hole if I need to. Because I went to a bit of trouble to get some pre-made bases. This, I can't even, one of these was somebody showing me their method for blending, and one was my attempting to do it. And I'm not even sure which is which. I think this was the person who was demonstrating it. But in any event, this is like the other one I was showing you, where I don't know that this gives me any information that I wouldn't have unless I had these to look at. So I'm not going to keep these. This is I showed you the one guy where I was practicing the ink to metallics thing. Like there's yeah, it kind of shows up on my camera low, where you can see it's purple one way and then blue the other way. And this was the actual figure from the course, which her sword was attached when I took the course, and then subsequently fell off. But I suspect I could take a picture of these and remember the concept well enough to... Although, as we know, taking pictures of metallics is always a chancy proposition. But I don't know that those are useful enough to keep. I'm not sure that testing the different paint lady, other than it just looks kind of funky to see how different the finishes of paint can be. Oh, she's worth keeping. Anyway. Oh, this was another, I mean, this is very recent. This is from a very recent show where I was explaining how I did extended the base on the Sophie that I painted. But I didn't prep this figure. The base was unintentionally larger than I thought I had. I am teaching that you can get rid of minis. I'm trying to go through all of some partially painted... Well, I mean, I went through my unpainted miniatures too, but I actually found those easier to make the choices about than like this is half painted, or I prepped it to paint, or I did it, in a class or something. Those are the ones that they weigh me down more. Like if I have like a giant box of unpainted miniatures, okay, I can just throw them in a box, but these things they either have to take up shelf space, or you have to package them up carefully in a way that takes up a lot of box space. So I only want the ones that I need, and I don't know that there's anything else I can show you all with this. I mean, I guess I could paint the base just to show base painting. But I wouldn't paint the figure with all the mold lines and stuff. Also, because like I already painted this figure kind of a lot. It took a minute the way I painted her, so I don't. It's gonna have to be a year or 3 before I would be like, yeah, I would paint that again. That's one reason I don't paint armies and stuff, because I generally, it's like, well, I already did that. Other than there's like a little cat. There's a little cat familiar that I've painted like 4 times or something, because it keeps getting put on bases or dioramas or whatever. So I would paint little familiar guys over and over again. That, in fact, I think is going to be my next blog post. I'm working on like 4 at the same time, which is not a very efficient way to do that. But I painted these little red pandas for Dark Sword Miniatures. And I want to talk a little bit about how I painted them and also share the colors. And I did like a work in progress thing. So there's like all the little steps of painting their coat. Mjar Azanabal loves this model. This is ReaperCon Sophie 2022. And you can go on the Reaper website and get her. She's got wings too that I had right here. The wings are very nice. I was talking earlier about how they have the texture sculpted in, which is a little hard to see on just the gray. But there's some nice, oh, I think it's more visible on, yeah, it's a little more visible on this one. But if you don't, like if you just want her as a warrior person, you just fill in these little spaces on the back and painted his hair. And then she's just a warrior person. But that's how the wings go in. They fit in very well. I'm glue challenged and I did not have any problems putting the wings in or getting them to stick. Yeah, Bella Grigio. That's one of the figures that I'm definitely getting rid of, was this guy. He of the arm that will never stick. So, tried twice, painted him twice, gave up. Where did I get this base? This base I made. I do not remember the episode number, but if you go back, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, something like that, episodes, on the, so I think maybe Queenie can do it again. There's a YouTube, Reaper has a YouTube channel, and then each show has a playlist. So if you look for the Beyond the Kit playlist, there's an episode where I did this base on the stream, and I talked about the exact materials I used and where you would get them and stuff like that. And this one is not, I mean, the little bit of sculpting thing, but I showed how I did it with toothpicks, actually, I think, because that's what I used to use for sculpting back in the day. So I showed the sculpting tools I used, but also how you can kind of make your own to start out, seeing whether you like it or not, with toothpicks and super glue. And then these things are pastes that you can get that have like sand or pumice texture in them. And that's just, this is actually a root rather than a stick. If you pull up little saplings, the roots are nice and flexible, and you can use the thicker ones as like logs or fallen branches, and then the thinner ones are nice for these like tendril creeper type vegetation. This is rosemary that I preserved with glycerin. We have HelloFresh, and they send, like, when they send fresh herbs, it's like you couldn't possibly just this black base. This is one of the Reaper bases. So Reaper makes a number of them. These have the bevel edge. There are other ones with other shape edges that I don't think I have any of. Actually, I might have a little bag. Yeah, Reaper makes a whole bunch of different base options. I don't think everything in this bag is Reaper. So there's ovals. I mean, this one's really large, but they come in different sizes. What other ones are there? Are squares. Yeah, this is Reaper one. So this is a different kind of edge. And these are nice if you have a miniature that's got a little bit of a base. These work well too. You can kind of add put your fill or whatever around there. So I like that kind too. Then this is the size that I put the real figure on, and then when I was going through my little bag of bases, I pulled the wrong out by mistake. Some of these are not Reaper bases. They make the Slaughter bases as well, which is probably, well, that one wasn't a Slaughter. But you can just cover that up with tape if you're putting a figure on it that you don't need the Slaughter for. And then they make totally flat on the top and with the flat edge. I do not remember the name for each of the kinds of edges, but I think they have a photo on the website. So reapermini.com. I don't know if there's a link just to bases, but if you just type bases in the search box, I'm sure it would pull up all of the very many options. Because this isn't even, somewhere I have a bag that's just the Reaper one, so I know what size they are. Oh, there's a square. So there's a square slot, and that's what I mean about the tape. If you get one of these and it's got that slot in the middle, that's for miniatures. I don't think I have one handy, but there are miniatures that have that metal tab. You can kind of see. And that's why those miniatures have the slot in the middle. But sometimes you have miniature, like, where did Sir Forescale go? Like Sir Forescale where you don't need it, so I just put Scotch tape on there, and then I cut around it so as much as possible of the base is still base. I like to glue, direct surface to direct surface. You're going to get the best attachment. Canoe Crasher says there is a landing page that lists all of the bases. There are lots of options, and I believe there are about to be more options because they did a Base Boss 2 Kickstarter. They haven't fulfilled it yet, but once all the people who backed it get their stuff, they will start showing up on the website as well. And they're also going to have base inserts, which is kind of like a pre-made version of this stuff where you just put it in there and it's already got like sculpted stones or wood or forest or whatever. And those are fun. I got a little preview of those and got to paint them up in all different ways. So you can change what they look like a lot just with paint. So I think we're all right time-wise now. Thank you all for hanging out with me. I don't know if some of you are still here, so clearly my winding stories of why am I getting rid of this and what was this from and whatnot weren't totally horrible, or you appreciate it because you're someone who has insomnia and you're going to listen to that later tonight to help you fall asleep. But I appreciate you for sticking with me. If you have ideas of things you'd like to see in future episodes, as always, just drop me a note in the manner of your choosing, other than the Discord that I constantly forget to look at. Greasy beats the heck out of TV. I don't know. Maybe you need, I was going to say you need cable, but who has cable anymore? You need a better streaming service. But I will be back next week. Maybe I will work on Mr. Tentacles some more. Wow, they're still not dry. Or something not this. Who knows? Even I don't know. My wife has cable. She likes vet shows. I mean, at this point, we're almost missing cable because now you need to have every dang streaming service. It's just like cable, but with more paperwork. Anyway, I'm going to let Quindy find you someone else to watch or listen to. You're welcome, Daka. Because she knows where all the fun people that we like are. And then I will... There's only so many times you can take watching a vet with his arm in a cow. Yeah, I guess that... Yeah. Yeah, I probably only need to see that once or twice. I know it happens, but I don't need to see it a lot. Poor cow. Anyway, I'm going to let Quindy find the thing, and I'll go to the goodbye screen. Thanks again. I always enjoy hanging out with you all. I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Oh, see Nut Bush. Say hi for me.